Ahoy there, jabronis. Welcome to Create and Destroy. I'm your host, Dan Donnarumma, and this is episode 37. Super freaking pumped about today's episode and my guest for you. I was fortunate enough to have Joe Clark come on to the podcast. Joe's from Rochester like me, and he plays guitar in Druse, which I had Alex and Joel from Druse also on the show. And Joe also does a solo project, an ambient droney project, and that project's called Joseph Lawrence Clark. And he recently released a wonderfully spectacular album called Cathedral Pines. It's a beautiful album. I've been listening to it a bunch at work because it just really helps me stay focused, and his music is just so rich, it's so dense, and I feel like you could just easily get lost in the sounds that he's able to make, man, and I love that. Seeing Joe perform his ambient stuff, what a fucking sight that is, man. I got to see him for the first time perform over the summer. He played a show with Druse and Planning for Burial, and oh my god, I talked to Joe about this. Some straight wizard shit, man, watching him perform, because he's got a whole fucking setup going on up there. He's constantly tweaking stuff. It's just so cool. And then you just, not only do you get sucked in by the soundscapes that he's creating with his music, but you feel it. And I just felt like it was so fucking immersive, man. Like, I felt like I was just being completely washed over by this wave of fucking beautiful music. It was really such a great experience. So Joe and I, we talked about that album and his ambient music. We talked about Druse and him playing guitar in the band, and then we also talked about pedals. My man at one point had a bunch of pedals, and then he also works for a pedal company here in Rochester called Adventure Audio, which is pretty freaking badass, man. Joe's a super nice dude, and I genuinely had an awesome time speaking with him, so I'm really glad that I was able to have him on the show and that I can share my conversation with you guys. So shit, let's get into it, guys. Here's my conversation with Joe Clark. All right, Joe, how's it going, man?
Going good, man. How's it going with you?
Not bad. Thank you so much for coming on to the podcast. I appreciate it. I got a lot of shit that I want to talk to you about.
Hell yeah.
So before we get into things that you've recently done, you're a guitarist in Druse, and then you also have a solo project, an ambient drone project, and that project is Joseph Lawrence Clark.
Correct.
And so before we delve into all that stuff, I want to start from the beginning.
Yeah.
So how old were you when you first started playing guitar?
I was about 13 or 14. And it's actually like really funny because I didn't want to play guitar. I wanted to play bass.
Really? What? I feel like most people do not want to play bass over guitar, right?
Yeah, I had like two friends that played instruments, and there was like a dude that played drums, and then we had a friend who was like classically trained, like upright bass. And he was the one that like I hung around a bunch, so I was like, oh, bass is cool, because he was just talking it up so much.
That goddamn upright bass, is that what it did?
Yeah. And it's funny because one of the first like concerts I ever went to, I was again like probably like 12 or 13. I went with this kid, and it was like just a bunch of like dad rock bands out, it was just like some party in a party in a park sort of situation. But they had a raffle for a guitar, and I had a bunch of money, and the only thing to buy there was beer or raffle tickets. So I bought raffle tickets, and I won a guitar, and I was
no way.
Yeah.
What kind of guitar was it? Do you remember?
It was, I can't remember the model, but it was a Yamaha. It was just like a Yamaha Strat clone.
That's awesome, dude.
Yeah. And I like for like a month was like trying to like figure out how to like turn it into a bass, and then I kind of caught on that's not how that works.
So what the hell were you doing to try to make it sound like a bass?
I more was just like, I like bought bass strings and like tried to make it work, like drilled out like the holes on the bottom.
Oh my God.
And then kind of fucked it up super hard and then had to fix it. So yeah, so that's.
Oh my God, dude. So like you actually tried to put 4 bass strings on a goddamn guitar.
Yes. And I also kind of caught on like the pickups don't line up,
Oh my God. So prior to this, did you have a big appreciation or love for music?
Yes, I did. It definitely well, I feel like it came through like skateboarding and like just like extreme sports and stuff like that. I definitely like growing up, it, you know, when I was like young, it like didn't mean anything to me. But then I started like going to the skate park and like people would have like the fucking Vans Warped Tour comp blasting like on a boombox. And I was just like, oh man, this is some cool shit. You know, like this is like angry. Like what is going on here? Like it kind of, I don't know. It was like really interesting.
Skateboarding and fucking like punk and underground music go together like peanut butter and jelly, right? Yeah, dude. I got into, so I started skateboarding when I was like 15, 16 maybe.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was the same thing. My friends and I would listen to hardcore and fucking go and skate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's definitely, I feel like that's where it started. And then I definitely like I remember through that, I was like, all right, maybe I should buy CDs. Cause I had, you know, at that point I like didn't have a CD player. So I bought a CD player, and like went to like Walmart and it was just like, oh, like, I guess I should pick out music, like literally not knowing like anything that I was grabbing. I kind of just grabbed things that had cool covers and I grabbed Led Zeppelin 3, which like that was like huge when I was growing up. I grabbed Vans Warped Tour because I was just like, all right, cool. I know what this is all about. And then for some reason I grabbed Jimmy Eat World Bleed America. And I have no idea why I grabbed that, but it's a good record.
So I don't know off the top of my head any specific like Jimmy Eat World records, but I know they had those like singles that blew up. It was probably like the late 90s, early 2000s that I was definitely into.
Yeah, it definitely like corresponds with like that, that record or whatever.
During this time when you're like 13, 14 years old, you win this fucking guitar. Mm-hmm. At that point, had you been listening to like punk and hardcore and stuff like that, or did that sort of style of music wind up coming into your life a little bit later on? Yeah,
it definitely came in a little bit later. Like I had like some understanding through just like I said, like those like Warped Tour comps and stuff. But like that, I mean, that was also just like, you know, that was more like metalcore-y sort of stuff, not like punk and hardcore. That came probably when I was like 15. Because my friend that played drums, you know, when I got a guitar, I was like, all right, I guess we start a band or we start playing, you know, like we decided we need to start playing music together. And he had an older brother who was like just graduating high school and was like deep in the shit already. You know, he was like, this is definitely at the prime time of just like downloading records online and all that, like so easy and whatnot.
LimeWire, baby.
Yeah, man. Yeah. So he definitely, so basically, like when his older brother kind of caught on that, like we were starting to play music and wanted to do that, he definitely was like the first one that when he found out I bought like an iPod, he was like, "Bring it over. I'm gonna put stuff on there," and he put on like Comeback Kid and a bunch of like more like melodic hardcore bands, which like that, like as you can tell by the fact that I play in a kind of melodic hardcore band now, that kind of stuck and resonated with me like a lot. So that, that's probably when I was like 15. I got more introduced to that culture because it started going to shows, obviously, once I started being like, oh, this is sweet. There's this around here too. Like I should probably go after it.
Dude, so my friend, he would hook me up with, that's how I found a lot of bands out, was from my buddy. I'd bring my iPod over to his house and he'd be like, all right, you want to listen to this band, and I would just fucking put them on my iPod.
Yeah, dude, that's the way to do it, man. Yeah. It's funny. It's because like, I feel like nowadays with like Spotify and stuff like that,
it's so easier now.
It's easier, but you also like lose the like personal connection of somebody suggesting music to you. And I've been like trying to make a point with like my friends to just be like, tell me bands. Tell me what you're actually listening to.
So I completely agree, dude. Part of finding out bands is discovering them, right? And it's so much easier now than it was even just a few years ago. I feel like it was only a couple of years ago that I started like really using Spotify as my main source of finding music.
Yeah.
Prior to that, dude, it was using like blogs to download albums, LimeWire, like that. And then having conversations with people and saying, hey, which band should I check out? Now it's just so fucking easy.
Yeah. I remember like when I found like Pitchfork, that was like the best, worst thing that ever happened to me. Cause like I literally had like, you know, I was unaware of like a whole like subculture that was like kind of like, I guess like more mainstream underground in a sense.
Yeah.
And then like when I found that, I was just like, oh shit, this is like a ton of stuff that nobody else I know listens to. But
man.
Apparently a ton of people listen to.
Yeah. At this point, right, so you get this guitar, you're like 13, 14 years old. So it was around like 15 or so when you started thinking about being in a band, making music.
Yeah. yeah, so it was basically like, you know, my two friends that I brought up before, you know, we were like, all right, we should probably just like figure something out. And we tried a couple different things. We tried to do like a Led Zeppelin cover band because that was like, I don't know, that made sense to us. Obviously that didn't work. And then we learned a bunch of Offspring songs, which is like funny when I think about it now.
Dude, that was like one of the first like punk albums that I got into. Was, what was it called? Smash, or was it The Smash? I can't remember whatever the fuck the name of that album was. But yeah, dude, Offspring was the shit back in the day.
But I just remember like we learned those songs and then we were just like, oh, cool. Like this is the kind of thing that like we should try to do. And we like went through, it was basically like me and this drummer and then just like a rotating cast of like friends from when I was like legitimately like 15 till I was like 19. We like did like 7 different bands and it was like us trying out like everything. You know, we tried out like, oh, we're going to be like a pop punk band and then we're going to try like a shreddy metal band. And then we like slowly like just like worked from one band into the other until we like became this like more like metalcore-y melodic hardcore band, like more of I want to say like Modern Life is War, but like we still had like chuggy parts to it.
So at this point, how good were you on the guitar at like 15, 16 years old? Did it take time to get to a good point? Or
It definitely did. Yeah, it's actually funny because like when I first got it, I could not get my like the concept of like how my wrist is supposed to go like around the neck. So I would like put it on my lap and try to like play like with my hand on top of it. So it definitely took a lot of energy and time to like get better at it. But I also like around this time I was still skateboarding, but I fell like a couple times and like really hit my wrist. And I just like, I'm a pretty fearful person, I'll admit. So I definitely like did that a couple times. I was like, I don't want to break my wrist. I need something else to do. So then I just like threw all of my time and energy into like playing guitar. And then like after probably, 2 or 3 years, I was finally feeling like I had like an actual grasp on it. And then, never looked back.
And at what point did you wind up getting into like ambient, droney sounding stuff?
That was probably, I'm going to say like 2013, 2014, maybe. I was like it came late. I feel like there was always like some of that interest there. Like I definitely like gravitated towards bands that had that sound, but actually like realizing like, oh, this is something I kind of recognizing like, oh, this is something all these bands kind of have in common that I like, and then diving down the wormhole of like, oh, this is a whole genre. Yeah.
Dude, I remember like when I first started listening to post rock thinking that was ambient stuff.
Yeah.
And then when I finally discovered like legit ambient, like, oh, this is completely different sounding type of stuff.
Yeah, man.
What drew you towards ambient, droney type of music?
So I'll say that I feel like when I first, because similar thing, like finding like post-rock bands and stuff, like I want to say it actually, I feel like I found This Will Destroy You pretty early on, probably when I was like getting into like punk and hardcore. And I remember like thinking it was cool because it was like super over dramatic to, at that point I was just like, this is like so emotional, like everything else is so mad and this is so sad, like what is going on here? But it definitely, I feel like when it was probably when I was like playing in that like the last like that like melodic hardcore band I was just talking about.
At what point did you start fucking around and making ambient stuff?
So I say I first started messing around with it probably when I was like 19 and maybe 18 or 19. So like 2010, 2011. Just because I was living in a house with a bunch of friends that I played in a band with. And I had just like really discovered like guitar pedals and like what they're actually about. Like I had like a Line 6 DL4 and I had like an overdrive for like ever, but I just like I didn't utilize them. I kind of would just like turn them on and be like, oh, there's a cool sound, whatever. And it was around that time that I was like also discovered the joys of smoking pot and was like just sitting there, just like messing around with like changing knobs on the delay pedal and just being like, whoa, this is insane. And just like figuring out, oh, if I turn the feedback all the way up and I just start like tremolo picking like crazy, I can like create this like wall that sounds there's like a million of me, but I'm really playing like one note on one string.
Primarily, this was you kind of fucking around in your guitar, and this is kind of how it started.
Yeah. So that's definitely how it started, and that definitely started like just a little interest in just like guitar equipment, because I was just like, oh man, I can make this guitar not sound like a guitar. This is crazy. And it kind of was always just like I thought it was cool. Would add it to like bands and stuff. I feel like when I like actually started going after trying to make actual ambient music was probably when I was like 24. I was touring with a band full time for a couple of years, and there was definitely a period of time where we would be doing like West Coast tours out to the West Coast and back, and we would be doing drives from like Phoenix, Arizona to like Austin, Texas, and just going through the desert, and we doing these drives that are like 20 plus hours long, and listening to punk records over and over again. You could crush 5 punk records in 2 hours. And then I kind of like remembered post-rock bands, and then remembered, or better yet, I remembered post-rock bands, started looking more into them, refound like Sigur Rós, and they were doing a tour where Tim Hecker and One Tricks Point Never were support. And I was like, I should see what these two artists are about. And then that kind of just like opened up this wormhole.
I recently mentioned this online. Mm-hmm. I feel like it's almost like sacrilege. Not that I think Sigur Rós is bad or anything, or that I don't like them. They just never stuck for me. So I've checked them out, and I know people love them, and they're such a stalwart in fucking post rock, but for some reason just never kind of stuck with me.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's definitely like I haven't listened to them in probably 2 years or so. And I actually, the other day, like I was just going through records in my house, and I stumbled across one of theirs, and I was like, I should revisit this and see what it's all about. And like, I definitely see why I gravitated towards it, but I'm definitely like, it's not really for me right now.
Have you ever seen them play before? Because I've had friends who've seen them before, and they're like, they're incredible.
I did see them play, and I will say it was like fucking incredible.
Yeah, dude. And my friend has seen them several times. He's like, every time I've seen them, they're amazing.
Yeah, no, it genuinely like that concert was like huge for me, because it was One Tricks Point Never opened it, which like that was like a big part of like why I wanted to go, because I was like, this is like electronic music that I've never heard before, and I need to see what this actually is about live. So I went and saw that set and was like, fuck, this is crazy. Like, this is like some weird fucking art music. Like, I don't even know how to like process this as. And then like it was like in an arena, and being in an arena, I just decided to drink a million beers. So by the time Sigur Rós came on, I was just like crying the entire time, because I was just a little too intoxicated. But it was like, it was so powerful. It's like, there's definitely one of my favorite like music experiences that I've ever had.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So you wind up kind of fucking around, making some ambient sounding stuff. At what point did you say, I want to start like actually creating ambient stuff as like a project?
Yeah. Probably, I'm going to say probably around that time that I went to that Sigur Rós concert, which was around like 2014 or 2015, probably 2014. Because I definitely, that like a mix of like seeing that concert, and also I happened to see Explosions in the Sky that year. I thought that was cool. But also like I really was just diving down the wormhole of just like just finding artists and being like so inspired that I was like, I need to just like, I don't know, like I just feel like this is like what I need to do right now. I also at the time was like, I was like touring for bands that weren't my own thing. Like I was like filling in for other people's bands. So I definitely also just kind of like needed something that I was like, all right, I need something that's like mine, something that I truly want to do and go after. Yeah. And it was, so it was around that time.
And as you started to make some ambient stuff, was there a lot of, I'm assuming at this point, right, there was probably a lot of experimentation that was going on?
Yeah, there's a ton. This is like, especially like, I feel grateful that I got to make my life exclusively like music for a couple of years, because I like really dove into just like acquiring equipment. So I like, when I started making ambient music, I already had like fucking like 30 guitar pedals sitting around. So it was a lot of just like sitting in my room, like after, you know, getting home from a tour and having like a week and just being like, all right, I'm just going to like put this pedal in front of this pedal and like make some noise and like record it onto my computer. And then like, oh, I'm going to flip these around and like try the same thing. And just really figuring out like, oh, how can I make these like landscapes with like just guitar and guitar pedals?
Being that you play in a band with other people and then you have your solo project, is it weird to maybe on, you know, a certain occasion you're working on ambient stuff and then you're going to band practice and you're messing around with these other dudes? Do you have to like kind of turn on a switch, or is to you it's not that big of an issue?
It's, I don't know, it's weird because there's certain days where it's like not a big deal at all, where it's like I could be at my house and like working on ambient music all morning, and then like it's almost like a relief to like go be around other people that are just like, all right, we're gonna be loud and fast and hit less pedals and, you know, like do that. But there's definitely, I feel like when I'm like actually really in it, when I'm like, all right, I'm like super committed to making a piece, it can be like really difficult to like turn it off, you know, and then like go and try to like write more aggressive music. I guess with that being said, I also like have found myself over time just kind of trying to just make what I need to make at that time. So there, you know, there's definitely been periods of time where like I'm very deep into making, you know, ambient experimental music. And I'll have like, I just like won't, I don't want to say I won't be able to write like a song for the band, but a little more just like it's just harder to get there. So instead of like forcing it, I've just been like, oh, when the time comes, the time will come.
Yeah, dude, I have to imagine, right? When you're focused on ambient stuff, I at least for me, I feel like it would be somewhat of a difficult switch to writing something that sounds ambient and drony to then something that, because especially some of your songs are fucking long, man, right? And Druse songs are not as long, right?
Yeah.
So that alone, I think, would be a little bit of a challenge, right?
Yeah, dude, it definitely, it can be, that can be a weird switch for sure. Yeah.
You know, in preparing for our discussion, because I want to talk about your latest album, Cathedral Pines. Oh, yeah. Those two songs, man, are basically 20 minutes apiece, right? So for you, what is more of a challenge? Is it harder for you to write something that's going to be longer, or is it tougher for you to write something that's maybe shorter, 3 to maybe 5 minutes or even 6 minutes?
Definitely shorter. It's definitely tougher to write for shorter, I feel like, because I feel like a lot of my writing process for ambient stuff is a lot of like, oh, I'm going to do this layer of like, oh, this layer is going to be like a ton of like piano and stuff like that. And then I'm like, all right, I'm gradually want to build up guitar over it. So I'm going to like do some like just experimenting in just like that of like guitar. And then like when I do that alone and get to where I want to get to with that, I'll look at like the time signature thing on my, or my time clock on my recording software, and it'll be like, oh, you're already at 7 minutes, or you're already at here. I'm like, fuck. So yeah, it's like, it's a lot more difficult for me to kind of be like, all right, I'm going to make this 4 minutes of like what I need to do.
Gotta be concise, right?
Yeah.
I feel like it's almost like writing, right? When you're trying to be concise, your margin for error is going to be smaller.
Yeah. So I'll say that like it definitely is tougher to write shorter, but writing longer is like the most like freeing experience I've had creatively. Like just, especially these two pieces, it was very much like I tried to go in with the mindset of like, just kind of write until it felt done, instead of, because there was a minute where I was trying very hard to be in the mindset of like, no, like kind of processing how I listen to music. And sometimes I would listen to artists where I'm just like, I don't want to listen to 20 minutes of this. I want to listen to 4 minutes of this or that. So I was trying to get in that habit. And then I kind of caught on like, that's not how I work. That's not what I'm going to produce. What I feel best producing is what I feel freest doing. And that was kind of just being like, well, I'm just going to go until it's done.
So with the new album, right, you've got the two songs, and correct me if I'm wrong in the pronunciation of these songs, A Marathon and Methuselah? Is that? Do you know if that's how you pronounce them?
I believe so. Yes.
When I listened to the album for the first time and I saw the length of the two songs, you're just like, oh shit.
Yeah.
Because I'm kind of the same with you, where it's like sometimes when a song is like, I love Godspeed, but sometimes some of their songs are like, all right, man, this is a little too much here.
Yeah.
So going into it, I was like, oh, how's this going to be? But I think that those sounds, they draw me in, man. Those 20 minutes for each of those songs, it doesn't feel that way, at least for me.
Hey,
so I feel like the songs are able to really, they pull me in, they keep me interested, and by the end of it, I'm not like, oh fuck, that was just way too long. For me, when I listen to it, I don't get that. I feel like it's the perfect amount of time for those two songs. But I want to ask you, how the hell did you come up with the names? I had to Google those two, and I was like, what the fuck do these words mean?
To be honest, it was a lot of myself Google searching. It was a lot of myself, like, because like Cathedral Pines I've had kind of like for a minute that I've been like trying to like find a space for, and I felt like this release felt appropriate for it. But when it came to the other names, I was definitely trying to find like things that kind of corresponded with that, and then just like, but also things that weren't like, I don't know, like too straightforward and obvious. So it definitely was like a lot of genuine, just like, oh, I'm just like on a Google wormhole of just like, oh, nature things and this and that. And then suddenly I would like end up in one of these titles, and I was like, cool, that seems appropriate. Like I would put a title to it like in like iTunes and then listen to it and then like kind of look at the name throughout it and be like, no, this feels appropriate.
Really? So it was you. So the songs were already prepared, and then you were just like, I want to see if these names feel right for this song.
Yeah, like I'll say that like before I settled on these two names, there definitely was like 5 different names. Like I tried a couple different things.
Do you remember any of the other names for those two?
Oh God, yeah. I'm trying to think. There was one that was like fucking so cringy. I'm trying to remember what it was. It was just like, oh man, I'm going to remember it in like 10 minutes. So if I just shout out a word in 10 minutes.
So for these two songs, right?
Yeah.
Where would you say these songs are born from?
These songs are definitely born from, I would say, last winter. I definitely was going through this phase of like a mix. Like technically it was coming from a place of just like, I was kind of losing interest in guitar, and I very much was like, I want to like try some other shit. And I bought a synth and I was like, all right, I should try messing around with a synth. And then I was like, well, I like that, but maybe I should like try to teach myself how to play violin. So I tried to teach myself how to play violin. And then I was like, well, that's cool. I kind of want to like try to teach myself how to like sing. I've never like sang really in my life. So it's like, I'll try to do that. So technically that's where that came from. But I think it also kind of has come from just like, creatively, it's come from a place of, I had been doing a lot of the same thing repeatedly for 4 years or so, between like the band and like starting to experiment with ambient music. Because when I first was doing ambient music, I was doing like just guitar. And before I put out like my first tape, I had been doing it for like 2 years before I put out the tape, and then like a year and a half to 2 years of like just guitar performance. So I very much was just like, I am not feeling like stimulated. And that definitely was like messing, I feel like, a little bit with like my psyche in a sense, like it was almost like an identity crisis, because I spent from, 13, 14, 15 years old till 26, just like kind of existing as like, oh, I'm a guitar guy. That's like my whole thing.
Did you feel like playing guitar wasn't as challenging for you, or was it just that I've been doing this for so long now where I need to kind of find something else to kind of pick my interests creatively?
I think it just, it kind of just came from, I just didn't know where else to take it. Like I'd pick it up and I had my moves. I had, like, oh, like I'm trying to do something epic sounding. Here's this, oh, I'm trying to do something angry, like, oh, okay. And I would seem like I felt like I was going to the same like 12 concepts, and then so that for me, it was like, all right, I need to like step away from this because I'm not coming up with anything new. So I need to like try some other stuff to kind of maybe spark something. And I'll say like throughout the other stuff there, I threw guitar in there for sure, because it's just like it comes natural, but I definitely like had to find other things to inspire, pieces and whatnot, or just like, ideas.
For Cathedral Pines, is there a lot of guitar in the album, or did you kind of pull back on how much you use guitar for those two songs?
Comparatively to other things I've put out, there's like way less guitar. But it's still there. There's probably in each, I'll say in like every section of that, or, there's probably, I'll say probably like a fifth of it is guitar sounds, kind of just like processed. But I will say, I feel like a big thing for Cathedral Pines for me was like actually learning how to use like samplers. So even though there's guitar there, it's not like how it was before where I was like, oh, this is like me sitting in front of my computer, press record, play the guitar part. That's it. It very much was like, all right, I'm going to play the guitar part into the sampler, and then I'm going to like take, from second 10 to second 20, and then I'm going to pitch it down an octave, and then I'm going to like reverse it, and then I'm going to send that through pedals. And it just, so like it definitely like there's still guitar there, but it was just like almost like a different take on how I would approach guitar for something like that.
So for your ambient stuff, these two songs on Cathedral Pines, or even some of the other stuff that you've released, do you go into writing a song knowing, all right, this is how I want to sound, or is it you're working on something, you find a sound that you like, and then you build from there? Or is it, I want this song to sound like this, and I'm going to work on making it sound exactly like this? Or does it kind of just happen as you're working on stuff?
Yeah. So I feel like when I go into it, it usually is like, at first, it's a lot of just like, oh, I'm kind of just like, just trying to see what sticks. Like there's, on my computer, there's like so many songs that are like two, like, takes of like something that I've like tried to start out with, and I was like, it just didn't work. So I feel like it usually starts out with just like experimentation, and like if I find something that like resonates with me, that's usually something I'll be like, okay, cool, I need to like dive deeper into this and see what it's about. I feel like once I'm there, then I'm kind of like in a mindset of just like, I know what I want to do. Like I might be like, there might be the initial idea that's like this like slow build, and then I know like at some point there needs to be like a drop, and then like a big distorted thing, I feel like once it gets going, it kind of just like happens. But getting going, it is a lot of just like, see what happens, like just kind of hope that something good comes up when I when I sit down with whatever I'm sitting down with.
So one of the things that I love about your music is I feel like it's very immersive. It feels very dense and rich, and I feel like it's very immersive. And I saw you not too long ago. It was during the summer. I'm thinking, oh, the summer's not too long ago. Like, shit, we're in November already.
Yeah, dude, it's funny. I was thinking about that. That show was like a month and a half, 2 months ago, something like that. Cool.
And yeah, when I saw you there, I just felt completely fucking enveloped by this sound that was rich and dense and beautiful, man.
Cool.
So for you, is that your goal? Are you trying to make your music, this ambient stuff, to feel very immersive and bring the listener into a sound that's they're gonna almost maybe lose themselves in?
Yeah, no, 100%. Because that is very much for me personally, like that's what I like about making that kind of music. Is I like sitting there and like myself getting lost so deep in it. So, for a listener, that's kind of what I hope to give them, that same experience that I get with it. So that's definitely a big push. Yeah.
And we talked after that show. So I want to ask you, because I was fucking amazed by watching you perform.
Thank you.
What is it that you're doing up there? Can you explain, like, because you didn't have a guitar there, right? It was just, can you give a rundown of like what your live performance entails?
Yeah. So currently, well, first off, it's always changing. So as of like right now, November 2019, kind of like my thought process or like how I have stuff set up is I have like a big multi-channel mixer that has a couple different like effects sends on it. And I basically have, right now, I run 2 samplers, 2 synthesizers, and then a tape deck, and then just like a cassette recorder. I run all of those into it in like to separate tracks, and then have 1 to 2 effects loops going into either guitar pedals or like modular synth stuff. And then it's kind of just like, in a sense, it's like, it's not that it's like pre-recorded stuff, but it's a lot of like I have a sequence set up on a synthesizer ahead of time, and like I'll press play and then send that to effects, and then as I'm doing that, I'm gonna fade in a thing on the cassette deck, which then I'm gonna send that to different effects, and then just kind of like doing the dance of like, all right, I'm gonna like change this sampler, sampler, and I'm going to change the sample on the sampler as I'm like changing the sequence on this and sending it through a bunch of different stuff.
When I was watching you perform, I was thinking to myself, this is like some wizard shit right now. At least that's how I felt. I'm like, this is some fucking wizard shit. And we talked about this after the show. Like, I feel like if I were up there doing what you do, I would totally forget how to do stuff like, oh fuck, I'm forgetting this part. How do I do this? Like, how the fuck do you keep all that stuff straight?
It's two things. I definitely, I guess three things. I do try to rehearse a bunch before I play. I do also usually have some sort of like little cheat sheet of just like things that I know I'm gonna like need to remember. Like, oh, when I press this, I need to make sure this is over here doing this to make this happen. And then more than anything, I've also realized that like it's not gonna be perfect, and I'm gonna kind of fuck shit up, and I need to like embrace when I mess something up to kind of just like go with it, see where it's taking me. Because that happened to that show.
Did it really?
Yeah, there was like
happy accidents.
Yeah, there was like my one tape player. It was running out of batteries, and it definitely was kind of falling out of tune. But I kind of was like, you know what? I'm gonna send that and make it gross and distorted sounding for this part, and yeah.
I feel like for the kind of music you're making, right? It almost can kind of like, I don't want to say elevate, but it could work very well with what you're doing, right? Because I had no clue that was going on. So like when that shit was happening during that set, were you like freaking out, or you're just like, fuck it, I'm just gonna let what happens happens?
There's definitely the initial just like, oh shit, because my brain instinctively goes like, oh man, if this goes wrong, what else is gonna go wrong? But then it kind of getting back absorbed into the music, then it's just very much just like, take it as it comes, figure out a way to make it work or take it out.
So one of the things I wanted to ask you to go back to Cathedral Pines originally. So you had your two releases prior to this, and you went by the moniker Joe Clark. And then for this album, you decided to go by Joseph Lawrence Clark, which I'm assuming that's your full name.
That is my
right?
full name. Yep.
Yeah. What made you want to make that switch to your full name?
So I feel like it was a mix of things. I feel like the two big things for sure were that this to me felt like even though the other stuff I'm very proud of, this felt to me like the thing that I was like one of the things I was most proud of like making. So I was like, I feel like this needs like its own proper entity in a sense. Because I feel like with the other two releases, it very much was me figuring out like, what am I actually doing here? Like what am I actually trying to accomplish? And I feel like even with the first release, what I wanted to do was what happened with this release, where I dove more into samplers and I dove into more sounds. So I feel like for me, I was like, this is like where I want to go, and this is like where I'm proud of. So like I kind of, not that I want like a fresh start, but more of just like, this deserves more attention, I guess, in a sense. And I guess the other part of that is that Joe Clark, just that. I kind of worry sometimes when like it came up on someone's maybe Spotify recommended or like Bandcamp, that it's like, it kind of just sounds like it could be like your friend's dad, like it just, it doesn't have this like, I feel like it didn't relate with what the music I was trying to make. It felt like very just like, I don't want to say like lax, but like I feel like I was trying to make this like really immersive, dense, meaningful music to myself. So it just felt not proper, I guess, with this release.
Did you ever feel like when you were first starting this project that you wanted to use a moniker that was not your name, or did you know you wanted to use your name?
No, I definitely wanted to use a moniker for a while. But I am not the best at names. So I definitely similar thing to like what I was saying, like naming the songs on the record, where there was like a while where like I had my first record or the first tape done. and it was just like sitting in my computer, and like every other day I would like be like, oh, this is the name, and I would like change it on there, and then I would like put it on my phone, and I would like listen to it, and I would like look at it, and I'd just be like, no, that doesn't make any sense. What am I doing? And then eventually it kind of just turned around to just me being like, this is me. Like, this is what I want to do. This is like kind of what's going in my head and my heart. So like, it's just my name. That's it.
So for Cathedral Pines, you got to have, and hopefully I'm pronouncing this correctly. Is it Wagner?
Wagner.
Wagner. Okay.
I believe. I also don't really.
Yeah. So they released the album, and they're from Germany, right?
Yeah. From Berlin. Yeah.
How the fuck did you wind up like coming into contact with them and then getting them to release the album?
So I became aware of their label because my friend Cody, who does a project called Autumn Pool, who has been a really big just like inspiration and kind of just somebody that's like helped me one way or another kind of like figure out to get me to where I am now. He actually put out a tape through Glowing Window, which also put out my first release.
Yeah. I saw it. So I've only got to see him once.
Yeah.
I saw him, I'm trying to remember. I think he opened for Planning for Burial.
At the church?
It was, this was actually in Wilkes-Barre. So this was like 2 years ago, maybe.
Hell yeah.
Dude, he was definitely impressive when I saw him.
Yeah, dude, I brought him to Southwich Mission like a couple of years ago too, with Tom.
That's awesome. Yeah, I saw the first time I saw him was in Wilkes-Barre. I was like, this is fucking impressive, man.
Yeah. So long story short, he is like one of those people that like I definitely always kind of just like whatever he's doing, I'm always just, it's always intriguing, both like musically. And then I'm always just curious, like, who's putting out this dude's music? Because it's like, whoever's putting out has good taste. And he came out on a comp that they put out. So when I had these songs done, I sent them to like, I basically just like emailed these people and was just like, hey, like you put out music for a friend of mine. And also like, because I got that comp, it made me aware of the rest of their roster, and I was looking through all their stuff and I was like, this seems really appropriate. You do a lot of like stuff that's like really cool and really inspiring to me. So I honestly, it was kind of just a cold call of just like, hey, you guys are cool. I think this could be cool. Even if you just want to listen to it, that would be sweet. And then they got back to me and were stoked about it, which yeah, it's awesome.
That's really cool. It's funny, man. In doing this podcast and speaking with people, like I never would have thought that something as simple as like reaching out to a label and say, hey, would you maybe be interested in putting this out would work? But yeah, I guess it does.
Yeah, man. I feel like I've tried to do that with like bands before, but it always like I feel like you can tell, and this just is like, with music or without anything else, is like, you can tell when someone's being like authentic and when somebody's kind of just like trying to get something out of you. And I definitely like authentically was just like, I really fucking like what these people do. And I feel like this genuinely could be cool. And I just, they're a label that I respected. And I was like, even if they just listen to it, like that will get me stoked.
That's cool, man. And then earlier this year, so in January, almost a year ago now, you released Move By, which is a split with, I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly, Giugno?
Sorry, Tom, I don't know.
How did you guys wind up doing that split together?
So that was because we have mutual friends, and we both, at least for me, it's like I became aware of just like Tom as a human like a couple of years ago, and we just like kind of became like internet friends. And then I want to say we were just kind of sending like music back and forth, just kind of getting opinions on stuff. And then that kind of just, we both had songs where like we should just do this.
Fuck it, let's do it.
Yeah, let's just do it. Because especially like for me at that point, like my first release came out, and then because that release, Remove By, was definitely like my first experimentation into like, oh, I want to like add a synthesizer. I want to add a cassette thing. So I very much like wanted to put something out that was like a middle ground of like still pretty guitar heavy, but also like dabbling in that world.
For the tracks on Remove By, how long did you work on those songs?
I worked a couple months. Probably each, yeah.
And then what about for Cathedral Pines? How long did you work on those two tracks for?
The one track, the first track, definitely for like probably like half a year.
Wow.
Honestly, yeah. And then the other one, like Side B was probably, honestly, like maybe a month and a half. Like it kind of just like came together. Honestly, that track, a lot of it was that I had a show booked that I was like really stoked about, because I just like, it was at a venue that I knew had like a really dope sound system and stuff like that. So I was like, cool. Like I really want to play some new stuff. And I kind of like forced myself into a deadline that I was like, I want to like just like write something for this show. Without really, I didn't really have any intentions of like putting it out. I more just was like, all right, I just want to like make this thing for the show. I know they actually have subs there, so I'm gonna like try to do something that has like more like a little bit more sub heavy. And then once I like wrote this thing, played the show, then went home the next day and like listened to it, I was like, oh shit, this is actually like, now that I'm like listening to this is like objectively of like, it's just actual music, not like this like live performance thing, like feeling pretty cool about this. And then kind of spent probably another like 2 or 3 weeks kind of just like revising certain things.
Do you question maybe some of the things that you do more so with Druse or with your solo project? Or at all, do you do that in general? I should probably ask you that first.
Just like when writing or for?
Yeah, like do you think that, when you're writing something, you're like, will this work or will it not work? Is that something that kind of pops in your head during the writing process?
It does, but I feel like that happens more at times when something doesn't work. Like when I like, if I run into a spot where I'm like, well, this is actually happening. Which then usually I've kind of caught on now if I stop and have that thought. A lot of times it's just like, it's probably not working if I'm thinking about it.
Does that happen more often with Druse or with your solo stuff?
Probably, honestly, it's like a 50-50 split, because I feel like fortunately with Druse, it's like there is 3 other brains to kind of help process like, like we might run into something where I might be like, well, I don't know. But there's like 3 other people to be like, well, change this, change that. And then suddenly it's like, oh no, this does work. We just like had to look at the bigger picture. With solo stuff, it's a little bit different because I have to really sit there with myself and like think about it.
So would you say that your experience playing in bands and playing with other musicians has been able to compound what you do as a solo artist?
Yeah, I'd say so. Yeah, it definitely is like, I don't know. It's definitely, I feel like doing solo stuff has like made me appreciate having collaborators, and has also like made me realize that like happy accidents are important of the process.
I feel like playing in a band and playing with others, right? Just having the ability to have conversations and bounce ideas off with other people absolutely has to help. And so doing stuff solo has got to be trickier.
Yeah, no, it's definitely like for the longest time, there was probably honestly like a 2-year period of time where just like I wouldn't share any of my stuff until I thought it was like quote unquote done, until I was like, this is good. And I've kind of caught on that like, if I do that, I'm not going to put anything else. Like I'm not going to put anything out because like it's never going to be perfect. So I definitely have the past like probably a year more than ever. Like I'll get like close to where I think something is, done, and I'll like show it to like anybody. I'll show it to a friend. I'll show it to somebody I'm just like talking to online, and just be like, just see what they think about it to see where it's actually at.
Which do you prefer more, performing with Druse or performing your solo stuff?
Honestly, I really love doing both because they're both 2 completely different things. I feel like I really enjoy like the high energy that Druse is, of just like I feel like Druse is more physically pleasing, both just like being there, guitar in hand, smashing on stuff, smashing guitar pedals, and then just like feeling the energy of people being like, oh man, this is fast and, like kind of aggressive, but kind of beautiful. Where it's like that in itself is like fucking high. But doing the solo stuff, I feel like it is like performing it live, especially like when I do have a chance to like do it on like good speakers, is like so satisfying, because can be just this immersive thing that is like both like very therapeutic in the sense of just like calming, but also just like getting a lot of stuff out in a way that feels appropriate. It feels not so overly aggressive.
So you basically get the best of both worlds.
Yeah, right?
So I want to switch gears here and talk about pedals.
Yeah, let's do it.
Because, dude, so I remember the first time I saw you guys play, I was like fucking blown away with your pedal board and like with you performing and like, it looks like you're playing like Dance Dance Revolution at times, just like stomping away. So at this point, you kind of made a comment earlier. How many pedals would you say you have at this point in time?
Honestly, right now is probably the least amount of pedals I've had in like 5 or 6 years. And I think I only have like 15 or 17 in my house.
Really?
Right now. Yeah.
Because I remember you and it was like right after I interviewed Alex and Joel and we were talking about this. I think you told me you had something like 40 or some shit like that, right?
I had 40. I think it was like 44 or 43 at one point. Yeah. And unfortunately, I started selling them to buy synthesizers, which is like good in one sense, but also a little sad in another sense.
I'm sure, dude.
I gotta say, actually, I have the itch very much right now.
Do you remember the first pedal that you got?
Yes. The first pedal I ever got was the just like the Boss Yellow Overdrive. I got that, and I got a Line 6 DL4 in the same like. Oh shit! No, actually, now that I say that, I got that Boss pedal, and then I got an Ibanez Weeping Demon wah pedal, and then the Line 6 DL4 in like a 2-week time period.
Do you still have that wah pedal?
I don't. That I do not have. No.
I feel like if you could pull off using wah, I've never used wah before, but like if you could pull it off, it would probably sound cool as fuck.
Yeah, there's a minute where I did have an auto wah pedal on my board for a minute, which was like fucking sweet. It was actually like a lot cooler than I thought it was gonna be.
Do you use a wah pedal at any point in Druse or no?
No. On one of the records there definitely is a part that has like that auto wah pedal, but no like actual like volume pedal sort of wah pedal. Yeah.
When you had 40, or however many number of pedals, most pedals.
Yeah.
Would you use the same pedals when you would perform, or would you switch it up?
I would go through periods of time where it would be like a lot of the same pedals. There definitely is like, a couple that are like I have to do the songs. But it very much for a while it would just be like I would set up a board and just like kind of not want to take it apart. But for the most part, I mean, that was kind of the fun of having 40 pedals is like there's only so much room, so you got to change it up, Yeah.
Since you're using this pedal board, is there ever times where you're performing like, oh shit, I don't remember which pedal I'm supposed to use here, or is it like you're just on auto drive at that point?
When I had that many, I feel like I was on auto drive, but there'd be a lot of times where I would click one too many, and then it would be kind of like I was saying with like the ambient stuff where something goes wrong where I would have to like, that's kind of where I learned that whole thing where it's like, oh, I'm going to hit something wrong. And instead of like making a big deal of just like either like stopping playing or even just like noting, like making it noticeable to people around me that I'm like, oh shit, I fucked up. I kind of learned like,
go with it.
Yeah, just go with it. Like, like something in the universe made me click that. So like, let's see where this takes me for a second.
Do you have a favorite pedal right now?
I do. I have a favorite pedal that will always be my favorite pedal, and it is the Line 6 DL4.
That's awesome, dude.
Yeah. And I will say, I was having this conversation with somebody earlier. I just purchased my 9th Line 6 DL4 pedal because they break very easy.
so shit, do you have multiple Line 6s currently right now, or just one, but you've just broken so many of them?
I just have one, and I just continue to break them. They're known for just like kind of falling apart. So
I'm pretty sure Tom Wasluck has told me he has like, he'll have one pedal and he likes it so much he'll get another pedal just as like a backup, which I'm just like, holy fuck, dude.
Yeah, there was a period of time where I did do that, but I definitely, like a couple years ago, like, because on those pedals you can do like a mod to make them last longer, and I was doing those so like they would last longer. So that one I haven't had like a backup on for a while. That is definitely a good move that I should do though.
Yeah, but I feel like you get fucking costly, right? Like, dude, like there's so many pedals I want to get, but it can add up so quickly, dude, man. Right?
It's bad, man.
Especially some of the cooler companies. Like, my God, dude, they're so expensive. They can be so expensive.
Yeah, dude. And I will say that's like when I was at my height of having like an insane amount of pedals, I probably only had like 5 to 7 like boutique pedals. I had a ton of like Boss pedals, and I had all like the pedals that I could go into a music store and be like, oh, that's $80. Oh, that's $70. Still adds up when you fucking hit 40 of them. But it's,
oh my God, yeah.
But it's not like going to a store and being like, I need that like $400 drive. because I think I kind of caught on that like once you stack more than like 5 pedals, like it's gonna sound bad. It doesn't, it's not gonna sound like your quote unquote pure tone. You're gonna it's just gonna sound crazy anyway. So like, might as well have the cheaper pedal that does something really funny.
You currently have been working with Adventure Audio, which is fucking cool, man. So I had never heard about Adventure Audio until you had mentioned it to me. So how did you wind up working with them?
It's actually kind of funny. So I was aware of their company because of a band that I used to tour with all the time. Their bass player definitely used one of his first early pedals, Christian, the guy who owns Adventure Audio. So I became aware of it. I was like, oh, this is like a cool, weird, small boutique company. And then at the time, I think Christian was living in New Jersey. So I was just like, oh, cool, whatever, And then like a couple of years later, this guy, John, who I used to tour with, brought up, he's like, oh, Christian like moved to like Rochester, and he's a pedal guy and you're a pedal guy. You guys should like connect. And I think I like reached out like once or twice to Christian just online, just like making small talk and just being like, hey, I saw, because he put out a pedal called Fuzz Peaks, which I was like, oh, this is crazy. This is so cool. Hell yeah. And then, we had like a couple small interactions just like at shows and this and that. And then Druse used to practice in this building that their shop was like 2 floors above us. And they shared a space with like this recording studio. And there was like one night where I think I was actually working on ambient stuff, but it literally was like 2:00 in the morning, and I was just like stoned out of my mind, just like in a hole. And like I heard somebody just like knock on the door, and I was just like, holy shit, like, oh boy. Just like really scared, just like, who is coming in right now? And it was like the guy that ran the studio upstairs, and he was just like, hey man, like you're making some crazy sounds down here. And it's like, what is going on? Like, just introduced himself. So like I went up and saw their studio, and Christian and Matt were both just like there working on stuff. So I met them through that, did a like, just talked to pedals and stuff again there, and actually like got to know each other more. And then I did like a demo video kind of for them that was basically just like all my pedals out, and I basically just like made a bunch of crazy noise for like a minute, then kind of just like weaseled my way into being like, hey, I'll stamp boxes if you give me a pedal. And I like started doing that, and then it kind of just later led into like, so part of like when I used to tour often, part of my things I would do is like take care of, bands' guitars and like try to like fix things. So I kind of taught myself how to solder. So between just like trying to like weasel my way in by doing like boxing stuff, and then also being like, hey, I kind of know how to solder, I kind of started like actually working there, and then it's all history.
The thing that amazes me the most about this story is the fact that like you're up at 2 a.m. stone playing music, and I'm like, dude, he's up at 2:00 playing music. I feel like, yo, I can't function right now. I need to go the fuck to bed.
Yeah. Well, it was a different time of my life. I'm very much in that same wave. Like now, my friend, I'm a little sleepy.
So now are you actually working on like helping to produce pedals?
Yeah. So my main role there is like manufacturing. I basically like, we're still a pretty small team. I think as of right now, there's like 6 or 7 of us. But we all kind of have like someone that's mainly designing, and then someone that's mainly in charge of like running the business, someone that does video, someone that does sales. And then I kind of fall into like, there's me. And then very recently we added another person to do like just building of the stuff. So yeah, I'm basically any pedal you buy from them. There's a good chance that my fingers were all up in that.
Does working with them now give you a bigger appreciation for pedals, or is it like?
Yeah, no, I feel like I had an appreciation before, but now I have more of appreciation for the boutique stuff. Because before, and it's still the sort of thing where it's like, I always just like gravitated towards the cheaper stuff because it was like, oh, it's more accessible, I can have a bunch of it. But now I'm seeing it's like, oh, with the boutique stuff, a lot of people go in, and even though they know like there's, a million guitar pedals out there nowadays, like I just want to do something that's like a cool, weird take on this. And I think that made me really appreciate that whole world a lot, being more involved in it. Just like really, when I see somebody's like putting out like a like combo pedal of like, oh, this is like a chorus with a delay, before I might be like, why am I going to spend like $300 on something that I could buy two of and just put next to each other or whatever. But now I've started to appreciate like, no, this person that did this had like a vision. They had a sound in their head and they figured it out and like spent the time to like spend hours upon hours like putting in different resistors and all these different things to make this sound. And yeah, it just definitely seeing the whole thing through. I'm like, oh shit, there's so much more that goes into this than just like a guy on an assembly line like stamping boxes or just like putting screws in. Like there's so much.
Pedals is like, they're right up there with like film photography is like just straight up like magic wizardry. Like developing film and like making prints to me is like, how the fuck did someone figure this out? And I feel like the same way with pedals. Like how the fuck did someone figure out using electronics to be able to generate a sound coming out of an amplifier for a guitar? Like that shit just blows my mind.
Dude, it's crazy to me. It's still like to this day, it's like there's certain days when I'm there and it's just like, it just feels, not that it feels like a job in like a bad way, but more just like, oh, I go to do a thing. But there'll be other days where specifically our designer Matt, he'll like be working on something and I'll just see out of the corner of my eye just like how his like brain is working and just like all these sort of things. I'm like, this is so fucking crazy, man. Like how does your brain figure all this stuff out? It's really inspiring.
So like what types of shit goes into like the innards of a pedal? Like what, I know there's chips and shit that but I have no fucking clue, man.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's literally just like it's just a bunch of electronic parts. Yeah. It's nothing. I mean, it's like, I guess to me, it doesn't seem like much, but it is. It's like, there's usually like a couple chips and then, some resistors and just power and creativity.
fucking wild, dude. And I didn't realize that we had a fucking pedal company here in Rochester until you told me. So that's fucking awesome, man.
Yeah, man.
It's a lot of cool shit in Rochester, I have to say.
There's a lot of cool shit going on in Rochester. I gotta say, like, I definitely, this past year, I was having a lot of like back and forth about like digging Rochester or not. Cause I've, even though I got to travel around a bunch and shit, I definitely, I grew up here. This is like where I've always spent my time. But I definitely, specifically the past like 2 weeks, have like really remembered like Rochester is fucking sweet, man. There's a lot of cool stuff going on here.
Yeah, for sure, man. So fuck, dude. What have you been listening to lately?
So I've been listening to the newest Big Thief record a ton, which is like way different than both Druse and my ambient shit. But it's like just got me fucking hooked.
I've never heard Big Thief before.
Really?
What do they sound like?
They are like, I want to say it's like indie folk sort of thing, but it's like electric. And it's just like, it's just weird, like it's not like your standard, like here's a couple chords, here's a chorus, here's a verse, here's a chorus. It's like their song structure is always just like all over their place. And their guitar work is like moderately noodly, but like kind of spacey. And then the singer's voice and like lyrics are just like, they just like suck me in like so hard. Yeah, it's cool. You should check out. I'm trying to think what the record is called off the top of my head. I've been listening to a lot of their record, which is called Two Hands, by the way. I've been listening to that a bunch, and the other thing I've been listening to a lot lately is that new Have a Nice Life.
Dude, oh my god, dude, I literally like I love the title track in that album. I listened to it like 3 or 4 times today. It's been stuck in my head all day, so I was listening to a bunch of the album. It's so fucking good, dude.
Yeah, dude, what is it? Science Beat? That dude, that is like
so good.
That like a friend just like reminded me like that came out and I was like, oh, I still hadn't listened to it like a couple days ago, and it literally was like I listened to it for like a couple hours, and like on my way over here I was like, what do I want to listen to? It's raining out. I should probably listen to that.
Hell yeah, man. So anything you got coming up for Druse or for, I know you recently released Cathedral Pines, but anything coming up for your solo project?
Yeah. So for Druse, locally we have a show on the 16th at the Sank, which is like a house venue, where Druse is going to be recording some stuff in the next couple months.
Fuck yeah. LP, EP.
I think it's going to be like some smaller stuff. I think.
Nice.
Yeah. Maybe like a yeah, probably like 2 or 3 smaller things, I think is the idea.
I loved when I interviewed Alex and Joel.
Yeah.
Alex was like, yeah, we might work on some new stuff. And Joel's like, no, we're working on new stuff.
That sounds right. Yeah. So that's what's going on there. And then for ambient stuff, I actually have probably before the end of the year, there'll be like a smaller thing. And then early next year, there's like another tape coming out. And then I'm hoping 2020, I'm hoping there's going to be, because I have a stockpile of stuff that I'm sitting on that I'm working with certain people to do some stuff with. So
fuck yeah, man.
Yeah.
Dude, so a lot of stuff coming up then.
Yeah, it's definitely, it's funny because if it's a slow burn, but I forget that there's so much happening all at once. Yeah.
Well, fuck, Joe, thank you so much for taking the time to come and get on the show. I appreciate it so much, dude.
Thank you for having me, man. I'm stoked to be here.
Yo, I would have loved to have heard what the fuck Joe was making at like 2 o'clock in the morning, high as shit, just fucking around in his guitar, making some ambient shit. That was probably some cool ass fucking music. I probably should have asked him if any of that wound up into Cathedral Pines or some of the previous stuff he put out. I'll have to ask him next time I see him. Straight up, as I mentioned to Joe, fucking pedals are on the same like level as film photography. How the fuck did someone figure that shit out? Just like blows my mind, man. Make sure after today, go check out Druse if you haven't done so. Druse is a fucking cool band, man. They're really fun to see live, and go listen to Joe's solo stuff. It's fucking excellent. Like I said, I've been listening to it a lot at work. It really helps me focus, and it just sounds like fucking incredible, man. So I'll make sure to add links in the show notes to how you could check out both Druse and Joe's solo project. While you're at it, check out Adventure Audio, man. They got some cool ass fucking pedals. And they're from Rochester, New York, so fuck yeah, support them if you can as well. If you are not subscribed to the show, get on it, man. Rate the show, help other people find and discover my nerdy ass talking to people about music. For my American listeners, happy fucking Thanksgiving. For those of you that are not in America that listen to the show, which I'm surprised how many people that are not from America listen to this podcast. You guys are the shit too, so I'm going to send some love your way. So thank you. I'm thankful for all you sons of bitches. So you know the drill. Get out there, create something cool. I will see you all next time.